Hey guys, welcome to the Outer Nexus. Tonight is going to be a UAP episode because just recently, I'll throw this up there, these guys were invited to the White House. And if you don't know who they are, that's Tim Burchett. That is Anna Paulina Luna. They're both, I believe, House representatives. This is Lou Elizondo, who is a major advocate for UAP disclosure because he used to run the government's UAP program, where I think it was called ATIP, where they would try to compile evidence and analyze this evidence of UFOs, whether it was a threat or not. And now he's come out after retirement, and he thinks that this information should be let known. This is Eric Burlison, who's also a representative. I believe they're all on the House Intelligence Committee. And this is Chris Mellon. And Chris Mellon, let me put this up, is he's an intelligence officer, but he's of Carnegie Mellon, like that family. Yeah. So he's like incredibly wealthy, like super, super wealthy. And his main goal seems to be to advocate for UAP disclosure. Apparently, he's very well aware of it. And just recently, Eric Burlison hired on David Grusch, who testified in 2023 that the U.S. government has a UAP crash retrieval program where they recover some sort of craft, and including what he calls biologics, and they've been attempting to reverse engineer this stuff and integrate it into our technology pipeline. Apparently, this has been going on since at least 1933. Grusch says that these things apparently go back in history like 4,000 years. Somehow they know this, but also this implication that they've integrated this technology into our own. It's a common theme. The book The Day After Roswell by General Philip Corso goes over to this. It's kind of a dramatized account in that book. Even he says it's embellished a little bit, but things like fiber optics, microprocessors, that sort of stuff allegedly was, there are semiconductors, things like that. Allegedly, that kind of stuff was reverse engineered from this. Potentially even what is allegedly the Byfield Brown effect on the B-2 bomber. That's allegedly why it's called B-2 bomber, because of this ionization of the wings that gives us a certain type of lift. So Eric Burlison has hired David Grusch on, and David Grusch, I mean, he claims to know where all the bodies are buried. That's what he says. But for the past, ever since he's testified, they just haven't been able to get him in that skiff. They just haven't been able to get him in that secure compartmentalized information facility in one of the trailers outside of the White House until now. And until now, that hasn't happened. And it just so happens that tomorrow, Ross Coulthart is dropping his, I believe it's the full-length, 2-hour-long original testimony interview that he had with him about all this stuff. And it just so happens that tomorrow is what the current administration is claiming to be some sort of liberation of America day with the tariffs. Who knows if that stuff is related, but it just seems pretty suspect. And just recently, Chris Mellon, well, we'll get into that later. But there's this article, here we go, that I will pull up here. Well, first I'll ask you, what do you think about this stuff, Billy? What's your opinion on all of this bullshit? Because William is on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. He's your advocate. So he has the fishing rod that reels me back in.
Yeah.
So what's your opinion here, Billy? Is any of this real?
So, I mean, as we've said before in our long talks, it kind of goes back for me to the...
Where's the bodies?
Kind of where's the bodies. Like, I want to see the ships, the bodies, and really, I would also like to, hear about the history of these beings, if they do exist.
Yeah.
Like, where are they from?
Yeah.
What's their culture like?
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because I think that is more concrete evidence of them being than potentially even seeing something that we aren't used to seeing.
Yeah, and I think that's a fantastic point that he brings up, is it doesn't actually matter whatever the fuck UFO disclosure they come out with. None of that actually matters until we have some sort of trade agreement with these beings and are trading resources with them, and they affect us in some way. Outside of that, all of this is kind of like a bullshit wild goose chase that doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter until it affects us. And that's,
that's always the point that I've always thrown back at you is,
but I agree with that. I do agree with that.
We can see it all we want. We can.
You could have a million videos of dots in the sky. They could be super compelling, and it doesn't fucking matter. It could all be CGI. It could all be bullshit. It doesn't matter until it actually matters. But here's the deal. If these guys are rolling out the 0-point energy engines, as Tara would say, the GN engines, then it matters. Then it matters a lot. Then it's like, holy shit, we are now in a completely new world now. Now we can...
See, that's a tangible thing.
That's and seriously, if you listen to what this administration is saying, it's all going to be about energy. It's all going to be about reducing the cost of energy. And what America's going to have next is going to be, the entire world's going to want it. I mean, listen, Trump's ego, why wouldn't he utilize UFO technology? He knows he can't be the one that comes out and says aliens are real. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine if they had a Pleiadian ship, 1970s style, blue spandex, Halloween silver moon boots, on the White House lawn, Trump shakes his hand. They do this. They did. Nobody would believe that. Nobody would believe that.
I do want to cut you off real quick.
Nobody would believe it.
And the reason I want to cut you off real quick here is because I know what you're going to come out and say next, but I do think that Trump has the...
he would actually do that. He would do that. He might do that. He might do it. But you're right. He might actually do that anyway, just to be that, like, I was the president that shook the alien's hand on camera. But I think that's why they actually had Lou Elizondo do it. They had Lou Elizondo dress up in the suit, go on CNN. They had the guy interview him. He looked deadpan into the camera, super serious. Aliens are real now, guys. Like, he did the whole UFO disclosure. That video is, and I think that's what he did. I think that was the point of that. That's your generic. Okay, you want a UFO disclosure, but have Lou do it. Because Trump. I don't think they could get Trump to do it. Nobody would take it seriously if Trump did it. However, the main thing is. The only way that the only other way, other than having some sort of trade agreement with these beings, is if we get another country on board. And I think that's happening. I think, and I'm going to pull this up here. And I can't really find this footage anywhere. Vetted found it on like Japanese YouTube or something. So this is Chris Mellon, like, testifying before the Japanese. Oh shit! Here we go. Before the Japanese assembly, their parliament, and they wanted information from him. You could watch this video. It's on Vetted. Chris Mellon drops bombshells in a new video from Japanese government. It's actually pretty funny. He has to like speak and then wait his turn, and they screw up a couple times. there's a little bit of humor to it, but it's very serious also. And the main point that I'm trying to get with this is that, listen, if we want UFO disclosure, we need the weebs on board. Listen, I know a lot of weebs who watch a lot of anime, and they all think it's bullshit. If we got the weebs on board, I think it would become real. We would verify it. What do you think, Billy? If we got,
I mean,
and I'm only half kidding there, by the way.
Yeah, you would want them on board because, I mean, if you're really going for it in a way in the background, they're the ones that are going to track down all the. They're the ones that are always going to be on the internet looking for all the little bits of information. Yeah. They're always going to be that person.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. But the point that I wanted to get to was that that's the other way to legitimize this whole process is if another country, a big nice country that's one of our strongest allies, verifies that yes, this information is accurate. It's it's happening. Extraterrestrials are visiting our planet, so on and so forth. And I speculate that's how it'll happen. It'll be Japan and then France, and then it's just cat's out of the bag at that point. And the reason why I think it's going to be Japan first is because they actually had one of the most compelling UFO encounters that might have ever happened, and it was with a Japanese pilot. I believe he was carrying, his cargo was like a bunch of wine over from Alaska to Japan, and as it was happening, as he was over the ocean, this massive object. This massive object. That's his plane right there. Appeared next to his plane and just kind of monitored his plane. He said it was terrifying. It was this giant metallic sphere with that kind of thing going on in it, like almost like a hamburger kind of. And what's interesting about that is that Lou Elizondo was talking about how there is footage, it's classified footage of, it's looking down at an oil rig in the ocean. And right next to the oil rig, some sort of craft or vessel moves underneath the water, and it's larger than the oil rig itself, and it doesn't displace the water, and it moves very fast by the oil rig. Now, the strange thing about this, even stranger and even more wild, and we'll just deep dive into speculation here, is it kind of lines up with the 4chan UFO whistleblowers thing, where apparently there's a gigantic hamburger-shaped mothership sort of deal hanging out in the Bermuda Triangle, and this craft just completely annihilates any kind of danger that gets near it. Apparently, it's decent at determining what's danger and what's not, but if you make sharp turns around it, you'll disappear. That's apparently where the Bermuda Triangle stuff comes from. But apparently, this thing makes UFOs to spec. It doesn't just make UFOs to spec. It makes like gray aliens and stuff to spec. Apparently, that might be one of the reasons why they all kind of look a little different, is because they're actually just kind of generated somehow. But the thing is, the real reason that I'm kind of dipping into that is because they had legitimate like an orb drone swarm thing happening off the coast of Florida, near Daytona. And people think that this is related to the New Jersey drones. And I only really, it only really piques my interest so much because I saw one of these orbs when I was a kid. I saw right over a cornfield. So I know these orbs are real to an extent. And it's just interesting. And we have examples of these things, like the Bet's mystery sphere. You got what looks like Inigo Montoya. He's got his metal ball there. Apparently this crashed out of the sky 1974. And apparently they could set it on the floor in their living room and it would roll around a bit. It would actually move on its own to a certain degree. And they thought there was like a little ball in there doing that, but they didn't know how it really worked. But I mean, we can get into that in a bit. But I really wanted to get into this. I wanted to read the article. So Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon returned to the Hill last week for closed-door discussions with several lawmakers. Two former defense officials who helped spur major efforts during previous congressional sessions to drive government transparency on unidentified anomalous phenomena returned to the Hill last week for closed-door discussions with several lawmakers about that issue and emerging challenges associated with drones. I'm confident that the next steps are not only going to follow, but I think we're going to see potentially even more progress than this year than we have in the last 7. These are pretty bold claims. You know, it's hard to tell, but it looks like this is going in a positive direction. This just kind of goes into his history, but yeah. Elizondo said his team for the series of meetings last week included Mellon, 2 attorneys and security representatives, and a security representative. They met in person with lawmakers and staff from multiple offices, including at least 1 senator, as well as Anna Luna, Tim Burchett, Eric Burlison. Officials from several of those offices acknowledged the meetings but declined to provide comments regarding specific discussions. The purpose was twofold. One was to offer our assistance in helping them find information, what they're looking for, and help, I think, to increase transparency. Yeah, this just kind of goes on and on. What do you think, Billy?
I mean, it nothing really changed.
Yeah.
And the reason I say it that way is because, you know, from the last time you asked to now,
yeah,
we're still in that zone where it's nothing. You know, we're still waiting for the things.
We're still waiting for things.
Yeah.
But what if it turns out that we have some giant AI mothership, like some sort of ancient AI drone defense network, protecting the planet?
I saw that post thing.
Yeah, and I have to pull up because it's literally my favorite science fiction novel of all time, and nobody even knows what it is. It's called Empire from the Ashes by David Weber. And I have a little bit of a synopsis for it. I'll just read the first one. Not that one. The story begins with Mutineer's Moon, where humanity discovers that Earth's moon is not a natural satellite, but an ancient, massive alien warship called Dahak, disguised and dormant for millennia. The protagonist, Colin McIntyre, a NASA astronaut, is abducted by Dahak's AI after stumbling upon its secret. He learns that Dahak was left behind by the Fourth Imperium, a long-lost human interstellar empire following a mutiny by a faction of its crew. The mutineers, led by a power-hungry Anu, fled Earth 50,000 years ago, becoming the basis for myths and legends as they meddled with primitive humanity. Dahak's original commander was killed, and its AI has been waiting for a new captain, and it just kind of goes from there. But what's interesting about this series is it kind of goes over these sort of concepts. It kind of goes over all these weird conspiracies and this idea that, you know, and we've heard from some experiencers that they've encountered like these other larger spheres, not as big as the one the Japanese airlines saw. But up in the mountains, they'll see a couple of them, and they're very strange. What if this is some sort of ancient AI defense grid? I mean, the moon is, because if you think about it, and they've said, the astronauts have said before that when they hit the moon, it rung like a bell, as though it was hollow. Yeah. You know?
I mean, it would be
The moon is like in a perfect position to perfectly ebb the ocean constantly.
It would be monumental news. And I mean that the moon one would be
there's so much crazy shit about the moon.
Yeah.
Check this out: moon crater depth mystery. You could call it moon craters, while seeming, are actually relatively shallow to their diameters. If you look at a moon crater, they are weirdly there's an endpoint to them. Hold on, let me see if I can pull one up. Let me see. Here we go. Like they're
wide and shallow.
They're wide and shallow.
Yeah. And
they're all shallow. Like you don't really see any that go past a certain depth.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I'm assuming that for that it's more the dust on the moon.
It could be just filling in the rest of the crater.
No, not just filling in the rest of the crater.
Yeah.
But more like it acts like a weird, like it absorbs some of the impact, so it goes more outwards than downwards.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking it's kind of the dust situation up there.
Yeah.
But like you said, even with if the moon was hollow, I mean, that would be a big one. Obviously, that's like there is no refuting that if it were to be true.
It's weird because hang on, let me pull this up. Moon rung like a bell. And this is the main point of contention for nearly an hour. I believe after landing. Here we go. What do they have to? AI overview is not available for this search. Let's use Grok. Let's do some Grok posting. Oh man. What did they mean when they said the moon rang like a bell for nearly an hour? Wow, that's pretty interesting. The phrase, the moon rang like a bell for nearly an hour, comes from observations made during the Apollo mission, specifically Apollo 12 in 1969, when the lunar module's ascent stage was intentionally crashed into the moon's surface after the astronauts had returned to the command module. The impact triggered seismic waves that were detected by seismometers placed on the moon by the Apollo crew. Interesting. Scientists were surprised by how long the moon vibrated, about an hour, compared to what they expected on Earth. Seismic vibrations from impact typically die down quickly due to our planet's composition. It's just dirt. The moon, however, has a much drier, more rigid, and less fractured structure with no significant atmosphere to dampen the vibrations. This allowed the seismic waves to reverberate longer, creating an effect likened to a bell ringing. The data suggested that the moon's interior is less dense and more uniform than Earth's, contributing to this prolonged ringing. It's a poetic way of describing a scientific phenomenon, how the moon's unique geology amplifies and sustains its vibrations. So from what I'm guessing, that might mean that there's it might be porous like a sponge. Spongy?
It just means it's less dense.
Basically,
it's less dense. Its core is not
no moon caves?
nickel iron, or if it is, it's much smaller.
But could there be moon caves?
Oh, there could absolutely be hollow sections, but naturally formed generally, because most planets are made from things crashing into each other, so there could be.
But why is it perfectly tidally locked and also can generate perfect eclipses for us?
Well, I mean, it's more, I think, the time that we live than anything. Granted, it works out fairly well for us to some degree for certain things, but the moon is less useful in other ways. You could actually say that we would be further along in possibly our space, exploration if the moon wasn't there.
Yeah.
Because we have to tie our Earth satellites when we're observing the universe to the light and dark, the way that the moon is reflecting light.
Yes.
If the moon wasn't there, we would see the night sky in a way that we have never seen it before.
That is true. That'd be interesting.
You know, and it would cause a lot more questions that way, because it's like there's so much up there.
Yeah.
You know, instead of the 3,000-ish stars that we typically see,
Yeah.
you know, you would see 3 million.
Yeah, you're probably right.
So, you know, it could actually be said that it not killed off, but really brought down the amount of force that there was behind pushing exploration into space.
Yeah. I've also heard that our moon is a much larger body comparatively than other moons for other planets. Like, and it's usually large planetoids like Jupiter and Saturn that have moons of our size.
Yeah.
Planets of our size normally don't have moons of that size or no moons at all.
Yeah.
So it's just an unusual thing. Maybe it's truly a Goldilocks zone. Maybe the entire solar system is one giant machine designed to generate life, like a giant spaceship traveling through the universe.
It could be, but then
designed by the Titans.
Then you're getting into
then you're getting into World of Warcraft lore at that point. Okay. Yeah.
But it is a thing, to speculate, like whether or not, because it all does seem like, wow, like everything's right there.
Yeah.
But that happens over time. Like a lot of it is just like, it happened because of the way things were when these big actions occurred. Like when the moon hit whatever it hit, or I should say, when the Earth hit the other planetoid that was in its orbit.
Yeah.
And then they collided, and then a big chunk got ripped off, ended up basically being.
See, but that's the other weird thing is that idea of the Earth or the moon being a chunk of Earth, in the way that they've described it.
Mm-hmm.
It because of the moon's shape, it doesn't seem likely that it happened that way, that it broke off from the Earth.
It's had a long time.
It has, but.
Because we got to remember when the first the collisions happen, everything is molten.
Oh yeah, you're not wrong about that.
Yeah, so and it's molten for millions of years.
Yeah, and then it's just out there being a molten.
Yeah,
thing.
And then eventually just
yeah. Well, you're probably right.
We'll see.
Yeah, but we'll see.
Time will tell.
We'll find out tomorrow. Not April 1st, April 2nd.
Yeah.
Whether we get that was a smart move.
That was smart.
Whether we get. Could you imagine Trump comes out and says UFOs are real on April 1st,
right.
But with the Pleiadian and the moon boots? Come on now, that would be the end right there. No, April 2nd, we'll find out if we get 0 point energy. Or we probably won't though. All right, see you later, guys. Remember to like and subscribe.